profound interest in 20th century politics and society. Throughout his career, he's worked tirelessly for the Democratic Party, and he was actively involved in the presidential campaigns of Bobby Kennedy in the 60s, George McGovern in the 70s, and Gary Hart in the 80s. His latest directorial effort, Bulworth, which won critical acclaim in the United States earlier this year and opens here next month, is his most overtly political film to date. We went to Los Angeles to talk to him about the politics in his life and in his films.
We stand at the doorstep of a new millennium. Our obligation is to reduce
I put a little time in on this.
And at the same time restore its creative power, to reinvigorate our society and bring about a rebirth of democracy. Any questions?
Nice.
Good evening. Yes.
Less is more.
When the riots and civil unrest went down about 4 years ago, you promised us federal funding to rebuild our community. What happened?
Well, what happened was that we all knew that was going to be big news for a while, so we all came down here, Bush, Clinton, Wilson, all of us. We got our pictures taken, told you what you wanted to hear, and we pretty much forgot about it.
Did he just say what I think he said?
Let's see where he's going with this.
Insurance down here. We can't get health insurance, fire insurance, life insurance. Why haven't you come out for Senate Bill 2720?
Well, because you haven't really contributed any money to my campaign, have you? You got any idea how much these insurance companies come up with? They pretty much depend on me to get a bill like that and bottle it up in my committee during an election, and in that way, we can kill it when you're not looking.
At the opening of Bulworth, we have an American senator who decides to have himself assassinated. And that and other things liberates him to tell what he sees eventually as the truth about the American political system. And his truth is extremely provocative, explosive, and it's expressed in terms of farce and comedy. But inside that, you're saying some very strong things about the American system. How difficult was it to get that sort of film off the ground?
Would you like to put this on a 10-point scale? It was up there around 9, but it was an odd circumstance because I had actually, it's the only time I've ever made a deal for a movie before I wrote it or put it together, and so it wasn't a great deal, but it did give me, I think it was the deal that allowed it to be made, because it would have been costly for the company to back out of the deal at that point.
The Democratic Party don't care about the African-American community.
Isn't that obvious? Hey, you got half of your kids out of work and the other half are in jail. Do you see any Democrat doing anything about it? Certainly not me. So what are you going to do, vote Republican? Come on, you're not going to vote Republican. Let's call a spade a spade.
Why did you want to make that film now?
Well, you know, I've spent a lot of my time actively involved in politics through the years, and what I feel about politics, I think has to be delivered through film now. I couldn't really get out there and in the political system and say as bluntly what I feel about money and race, and you know, our campaign finance system is so bad that I could only do it in comedy. We stand on the doorstep of a new millennium. We have an obligation, on the one hand, to reduce yada. It's up to the people to decide what the state of California and the nation will do. What do we do? The nation will do. It's up to you. What do we do? What do we do? Well, it's up to you. You know, it ain't that funny. You contribute all my money. You make your contribution, then you get your solution. As long as you can pay, I'm gonna do it all your way. Yes, the money talks and the people walk.
Yeah. Now let me hear you say it. Big money.
Big money! Big money!
Big money. Big money. Big money. Big money. Big money. Big money. One man, one vote. Now, is that really real? The name of our game is Let's Make a Deal. Now, people got their problems, the haves and the have-nots, but the ones that make me listen pay for 30-second spots.
You satirized the American healthcare system, funding, corporate control of the political process, spin doctoring, the whole, as it were, political delivery package. Okay, and it's a sort of plague on all these houses, you're saying.
Well, what has happened to politics, because of, I contend, almost everything in our lives is controlled now by 30-second spots, 30-second commercials on television. What has happened in politics is the same thing that's happened in the movies. You make a movie, you spend a long time on it, and when the time comes around to sell it, you really have to sell it in a week or two. You have to spend a tremendous amount of money, and this money is spent in 30-second spots. So you get it really affects the content of a movie in the same way as it affects the content of a political campaign or program. Everything gets homogenized and spun to meet the latest demographic information about the majority of the people.
California families who live by the rules and work hard and pay their taxes shouldn't be paying for people who do nothing. I'm Jay Bulworth. I believe in a hand up, not a handout. I need your support on Tuesday.
There's an America he wants which isn't there anymore. And what America do you think Bulworth wants?
It's an America where the government protects the people who need the government to protect them. You know, old people, young people, children, minorities, people that are not protected by the corporate interests.
You can call it single payer or Canadian way. Only socialized medicine will ever save the day. Come on now, let me hear that dirty word. Socialism! Now, the women in the world is mistreated and abused, but when we try to fix it, we tend to get confused. I got respect for all the sisters. They will tell you that's my style. But there's one thing in politics that always makes me smile. I like the pussy. The pussy. I like it really fine. And when you be a senator, you get it all the time.
A lot of the ideas in Bulworth reach back quite a long way in your career.
I've led a fairly political life since I became a movie actor.
Do you know where that came from?
I was born in Virginia. My father was political. I would not call my father a liberal. I'd call my father someone who wanted to be fair, but I grew up, you know, in a high school that didn't have a single a black student in it. This was actually the largest high school in south of the Mason-Dixon line in the United States. That is, in the old states that were the Confederacy. But I think that my mother and father were essentially fair people. They were both academics. They both were teachers. My father taught educational psychology and philosophy at a number of universities. My mother was a person who taught English and speech and what was called dramatics at that time. When I went into the theater, and my original intention was not at all to be an actor. I didn't know what I wanted to be. Maybe a director. I think I wanted to be around a lot of pretty girls, but it was, I sort of slipped into acting because I wasn't bad.
Oh, Bud. Bud, please don't be mad.
I'm not mad, Deanie.
Hi, Bud. Deanie?
Hi, Dad. I just can't stand it when you're mad.
Deanie, I don't know what's the matter with me lately. I'm always losing my temper. You're the only girl in the world for me. Don't you know that, Deanie?
I want to be.
If it weren't for you, Deanie, I don't know.
Splendor in the Grass. Splendor in the Grass was a movie that Jack Kennedy had seen. And then he wanted me to play him in a movie about the PT boat that he was on, the PT-109. So we got to know each other. And that was a very... that was quite an atmosphere around the Kennedy administration. So that was a big influence on my politics. And then Bobby was a greater influence on me than the president had been. I knew him better, and that's when I really began to be active in politics, was working with Bobby. So I think what you'd say that Jay Bulworth is an old-fashioned Kennedy liberal, you know. A guy who had a romantic idea about what government could accomplish, and very much antithetical to the prevailing popular majority opinion now that government is somehow bad, that both or too much government is bad, that both the Republican and Democratic parties have. Well, the Republican Party always went along those lines, but what we call the New Democratic Party has succumbed to this kind of centrist approach to things, or slightly right of center, which of course has moved the Republican Party even further to the right.
Did you get much heat from the corporation which allowed you to make this film, and which, among many others, no, you don't identify it as a particular one, but you attack such corporations quite strongly?
Well, at this point, I'm going to be slick and adroit enough not to answer your question, so I can tell you directly I'm not, that I'll, you know, they buy the advertising for the movie. I'm not a, I may be dumb, but I'm not stupid.
I got a simple question that I'd like to ask. What do you think my age is? He's had his time. Bless him. You know, the guy in the booth who's talking to you on that tiny little earphone, he's afraid the guys at network are going to tell him he's through if he lets the guy keep talking like I'm talking to you. Because the corporation's got the networks, and they get to say who gets to talk about the country and who's crazy today. I would cut to a commercial if you still want this job, because you may not be back tomorrow with this corporate mob. Cut to a commercial.
Okay, flush him.
Cut the commercial. Cut the commercial. Cut the commercial.
Was there a danger in rather stereotyping black culture by using to represent the black people?
Well, I think that any time you do this type of comedy or satire or whatever you want to call this kind of thing, Norman Mailer had a good definition for this picture. He called it a transcendental tragic farce. I don't know what the thing is. It makes me laugh, so I have no idea what it is. But at least when I do this kind of thing, I did it in Shampoo, I do it in this, you are always dealing with something that I would call heightened characterization. Someone else, if they wanted to be negative about it, might call it stereotyping. But I think it's a comedic device, whether you say I stereotype the people in the ghetto, or whether I stereotype the middle-aged white politician, or the wife of the politician, or all the way down the line. Look, the picture's very politically incorrect, and
it doesn't pull any punches.
One could be accused of being very foolish in this movie. You know.
Have you been accused of being foolish?
Well, yes. I mean. But I'm surprised at that more people haven't accused me of being foolish. It concerns me, to tell you the truth, because it makes me think that I'm just getting, you know, really old, and so I'm I hope it doesn't mean that I've gone completely conservative on the thing in some way, but I don't think it does.
I mean, there's boys over there on the monitor. They want a government smaller and weak,
But they'd be speaking for the richest 20% when they pretend and they defend the meek.
Ah, shit. Fuck, cocksucker. That's the real obscenity black folks living with every day, is trying to believe a motherfucking word Democrats and Republicans say.
The first time you, as it were, got hold of a film and gripped your own career in a very positive way was with Bonnie and Clyde, where you were the producer. And It's not all that often. I should imagine it's very rare indeed where actors also become producers.
You know, Bonnie and Clyde came really at the end of the studio system, and there was a window. Some people call it now, I don't know what they call it, some sort of era, between the death of the old contract system where the conservative owners of the studio had complete control over the themes of the movies that were made, with a number of exceptions, to the advent of mass release. You know, what was the unheard of number of 600 theaters in one night? Jaws. Between Bonnie and Clyde and Jaws, there were a number of years that were very exciting because the lunatics were running the asylum, and we followed personal instincts and personal passions in a way that because you didn't have the demographic, you didn't have the technological facility to find out what was going to be popular. You simply did what came from the gut.
Good afternoon. This is the Barrel Gang. Now, if everybody will just take it easy, nobody will get hurt.
I think Bonnie and Clyde's one of the most significant films in the history of American film, for many reasons. Above all, I think in just letting young people make the film. I mean, it's the film that comes before Easy Rider. It's the film that comes before many of those great films of the early 1970s. It was regarded by Warner Brothers as a film they couldn't understand. They didn't like it. They didn't know what it was about. They were dazzled when it found an audience. And in finding that audience, it was a way of proving that there were youngish people who had a right to make films in America, to take the power of making the films into their own hands.
It was really panned by a big section.
Well, it was panned by the older critics.
Yeah.
It was wildly praised by the younger critics, and wildly praised by the older critics who wanted to be younger critics. And it was...
What were they panning it for? What did they find?
Excessive violence and a mixture of comedy and violence that just wasn't done. It wasn't... I think it was considered to be immoral.
Is that your money or the bank's?
Mine.
All right. You keep it then. Next time I'll aim a little lower.
Now I'm absolutely stunned when I see a picture that just is violent.
All right.
And isn't comedic. Almost never are you delivered now a movie that just is simply violent. You know, it's got to be violent with the distance and the irony of comedy.
Happy birthday, hon!
When we did Bonnie and Clyde, I was very nutsy about sound, and I wanted to have a big gunshot, and I went to my friend George Stevens Sr., who was one of the great, many people think the greatest American movie director, and I said, you know, the way you had those gunshots in Shane, I said, boom. I said, how did you do that? Because I'd really like to do that. And he said, well, here's what we did. We shot the guns into trash cans, and then boom, they reverberated. And I said, because I want those gunshots to be way up here and the rest of the thing down here. So I want to be really shocked. And so we took his advice from Shane, and we did it. And the picture was a lot of gunshots in Bonnie and Clyde. So that was even before Shampoo. It was the old Warner Theater, which was in Leicester Square, and it seemed like about 14,000 balconies. It just went up and up and up, and all the people were there, and we started showing the movie, and it was going pretty well, but the gunshots were sort of muffled, and the sound was... I had music cues in here that would go way high and then down, but no, they were kind of smooth, and the gunshots were smooth, and I thought something is very wrong here. So I ran up what seemed to be these 14,000 flights of steps to the projectionist. Again, the projectionist was surprised to see the actor walk in. I said, "What is going on with your sound system?" He said, "Kid," he said, "you produced this movie, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Warner Brothers really fucked you on the sound." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, he said, "Let me show you what I've done." He shows me on the wall. He said, "Now you see in the first reel where the music went up here?" He said, "It's very, very uneven." He said, "I turn it down there, and when the gunshot goes, I turn that down, then I turn it back up on the dialogue." And he said, "And I've really done it, I think, very well for you." He says, "I haven't seen a picture this badly mixed since Shane." You know.
Bonnie and Clyde is a very insidious political film because it takes an old genre and it marries that energy to the mood of 67 and 68, to the rebelliousness of that time. And all of a sudden, you find that you've lost your moral bearing and that you really believe these outlaws have become ideal, rebellious figures of the 1960s. And that was an extraordinary trick.
A lot of it has to do with your approach to what is entertaining to you, what you find funny. The economics of the Depression, the role of government and authority in dealing with the Depression, I found ridiculous. I found ridiculous in the 1960s. So it resonated. In the same way that what I find funny now in Bulworth, it resonates. I don't know why. Same thing in Shampoo. They're all dealing with money. They're all dealing with the haves and the have-nots.
Well, you're looking great, baby.
What are you doing later?
Whatever you say.
We have this political thing tonight. Did you call me out at the house?
Sure.
You actually went to the bank?
Yeah.
For a loan?
Yeah.
You really want your own shop?
Yeah.
Why don't you see Lester?
What? Your husband?
Yes.
What about?
The shop. I think you'd be a good investment. I don't mind telling you.
Hey, listen, baby, I'm a star. I'm a star.
George?
Hey, baby. Say hello to Felicia.
I already said hello.
Oh.
George, when can we talk?
Well, I'm right in the middle of work now.
I know, but this is important. I have a decision to make. How about whether or not I'm going?
Going where?
Egypt.
Oh, honey, did they offer you the job yet?
No, but I think they might.
Wait a minute, I'll be right back.
I don't know what I need anymore.
George, is she the one with the pancreatic ulcer?
I don't know.
At the time, Shampoo, you were, one or two remarks you yourself made about it indicated that you thought it was delivering political messages as well as everything else.
Well, I think...
I mean, can I just quote back to you?
Sure.
I know it's a terrible thing to do,
It's
but
okay.
around when you were...
I'll deny I was there,
at the time of Shampoo,
Yeah.
which is, as everybody knows, about a Lothario hairdresser. But you said at the time, we're lying about the war in Vietnam, and we're lying about what we're doing sexually, and we're lying about money, and it's all happening in Beverly Hills.
Well, I didn't mean that I didn't mean to infer that Beverly Hills was the center of the universe, although it might have been the center of mine. It was all, yes, it happened also in Beverly Hills. Yeah, well, okay, I said, I don't even deny that quote, yeah. Shampoo was, had so much to do with sexual hypocrisy and lying, yes, sexual hypocrisy, which was an important subject then, and it's become, it seems to me, to be a very fashionable subject now, particularly. Shampoo is a very good movie, and it's funny. It's well acted. These characters are all heightened. As I spoke about this kind of style of comedy, whatever that I'm prone to.
Well, whatever I am, I think I can get you whatever you'd like.
You do? Whatever I'd like?
Whatever you'd like.
And most of all, I'd like to suck his cock.
At the time, the criticism on the movie was sharply divided. You know, there were some people who said, yeah, this kind of gets at what's been happening in whatever this was that was called the sexual revolution, or the collapse of one way of the Massachusetts Bay Colony and its way of thinking and the realities of American life.
I'm not sure whether the political background in Shampoo is real or whether it's just window dressing. I mean, I think it's really about a film about a guy who loves so many people and the problems he gets into it because of that. I think it's very difficult, and you would have to be very ingenious indeed to link it up to the Nixonian America.
And then there was this other response to the movie, which I think had something to do with the fact that my own personal life was probably distracting to people.
In what way?
Well, I probably was having a little too much fun at that point in life, and I think that maybe some people, you know, I always thought this central character of this hairdresser was kind of pathetic. I felt he was a person who could hardly respond in these circumstances, was sort of exhausted with what he felt were his obligations to the people that he encountered.
He was the greatest cocksucker in the world.
You are.
Fucking A.
Excuse me, Senator.
Oh, Charlotte, your friend feeling a little under the weather?
You funny asshole.
What I would say about the end of Shampoo is that promiscuity, whether that it is in love or in politics, is not a positive thing. And I think there's no more accurate correlation than the promiscuity of the sexual revolution of the 60s and the 70s to political promiscuity. How are you? How are you? It's glad to see. Hello, glad to see you. Ethel, how are you? It's nice. And Frank, hello. And hello. It's good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. It's good. How can it be so good to see everybody? Well, it's promiscuous, is what it is. It offers promises that aren't kept, politically or sexually, and I think that was the underlying fuel for the kind of trying to relate the politics of the 70s to the sex of the 70s.
But you did go from there to Reds, which you were talking about a time of non-ambiguity. You're talking about a time of 22-carat idealism, aren't you, there?
In the 1915 period of the left-wing radicalism in America, which is a subject that never really had been addressed in a commercial.
As seen through the eyes of John Reed, anyway.
I only want to say that if you strike, the American workers will not feel betrayed.
Американец говорит, что если мы сейчас пойдем на забастовку, то американские рабочие не будут думать, что мы их предали.
They're waiting for your example.
Они ждут, что мы пойдем
They're waiting for your
впереди.
leadership. If you refuse to support the capitalist war machine, they will follow your example, and if the workers of the world stand together, the war can be stopped.
Он говорит, что если мы, все рабочие, объединимся, то этой капиталистической войне мы сможем занять. Он привез нам привет от
Did you find the strain of selection of parts of his life difficult? It seems to me that when people make biopics, either on television or on the movie, that you're dealing with the life of a real person. You have an obligation, perhaps, or you don't, to that. But you also have the difficulty of selection. Was that the thing that bothered you, or did you just go for what you knew was the most dramatic and interesting and stay with that?
You know, it's interesting. You just called biopics, and I would say biopic. When you said biopic, I thought you said myopics. And I went down another road here, because I think you do become myopic when you get very interested in a person, because if you're writing and you're directing and you're acting and you're producing, you're going to be very interested in yourself, you know, and what you have to say. So you try not to twist it too much to your own needs at that moment. And I think that when you did a biography in a movie at that time, a little different from now. Now I think it's probably, if you're going to go around the chronology of someone's life, it lends itself to a longer form. Here's a life that only lasted 32 years, but think of if you're doing 75 years. Or so it does lend itself to a longer form. Or that thing that is always so necessary in form, which is being particular and choosing what you, distilling things to the essence.
Came out here, did it brand you in a way? Did they say that's that? He's wearing his political colours on his sleeve far too
I think there were people who felt that Reds was somehow some sort of had a left-wing agenda, or communist or socialist agenda. Propaganda or something. Believe me, if I were doing propaganda, I would do it better than that. I mean, this man, you know, got to the end of the road and had his idealism, but certainly was very confused about the 1917 revolution. Interestingly, a character who spoke very much in opposition to it was the character of Emma Goldman, played by Maureen Stapleton, and she was very much embraced by the Wall Street Journal and the various publications. But people don't look very deeply or for very long when a movie comes out. They say, well, here's the line on it, and I always felt that Charlie Bluhdorn and Barry Diller and the people at Paramount deserved a lot of credit, because they were really taken to task by the Wall Street Journal for having made this movie. And there were right-wingers in Hollywood that somehow wanted that segment of history to be unaddressed.
The funny thing about it is that it's a film about a communist, and yet you don't really feel the social anger in the man. You feel the adventure of it. It was not a film that offended. And in a way, I think a film about Jack Reed in America should have offended more people than that did. It should have had the right wing up in arms. And it didn't, because I think in the end, probably Beatty backed off from that a little bit. I don't think he likes offending people. I don't think that's in his nature.
You know, I never did an interview about Reds when I was making it. I believed then, as I believe now, that when you'd come out and you present this talkative, chatty kind of person with an agenda who really wants to promote his movie and get people to come and see it, it's too hot, and it really obliterates the movie, in my opinion. You do it because that's the world that we live in, and so you just do it. Ideally, I wouldn't do this at all. Also, I honestly have grown to enjoy people. For instance, I know about you for a long time, and we've known people, and we've not met, so I thought this is enjoyable to come and talk to him. I respect your work very much, and so I say, well, this'll be kind of, this'll be enjoyable, but it's important to me to come and talk without an agenda in relation to selling a movie.
Can we talk a bit about directing? Because we've talked about acting, we've talked about politics, we've talked about you as a producer, we've talked about you sort of the way you move towards films and your take on films. We haven't talked about directing films. And I can see similarities in the style and the attack and the methods between one film and another. It might be useful to start with Dick Tracy as something we can spread out from. Tracy, you set out with Strauer to make a particular look you wanted. Can you tell us how you approached that as a director?
Well, I'd have to begin with on talking about Dick Tracy, which I have tremendous affection for because it's naive. It's very, you know, I think I'd gotten to a point where what struck me about this guy Dick Tracy, had been around for 1 billion years, was that he just kept never getting married. And he was always with his Tess Trueheart, and he had no family, basically. And I think that's the thing that fueled me on Dick Tracy, that he was a good guy, basically, and, you know, he really was a sort of a star detective. And he ran around in his yellow coat and hat, and he didn't really make much advance in his personal life.
Don't...
Yes?
Don't you think we'd be happier if we just...
What?
What do you think?
Dick Tracy, are you asking me to...
Tracy. Pat Patton to Dick Tracy. Robbery in progress, Tracy. Metropolitan Bank.
Got get it on. Come on, let's go.
I think Beatty's an actor who always needs to see himself in a character, and I think, yeah, I think he found Dick Tracy a kind of admirable but sort of comic stiff. And I think as an actor, Beatty's very good at making gentle fun of himself, and he saw a way he could do that. But then Dick Tracy became this very stylish, stylistic, overdone film, and it got into all these sort of fights with between Beatty and Katzenberg about what it cost and whether it would ever make its money back. And it really sort of became just a commercial operation in the end, and I don't think that it stands up very well.
The naive aspect and interested me, which fed its way into a style of shooting the movie, which was to do it with very primary colors. To do a red was a red, a blue was a blue was true, it was a true blue, and a yellow was a yellow, and to see if I could keep the souffle up. I felt, I think, more about Dick Tracy as if it were a musical.
I'm gonna love you like nothing you've known. I'm gonna love you when you're all alone. Sooner is better than later, but lover, I'll hover, I'll plan. This time I'm not only getting, I'm holding my
Dick Tracy was a very, I think, beautifully lit movie. Vittorio and I think, get along very well. So we have a shorthand, and he's so good. We're able to work in different ways. The Bulworth thing was, I called him and I said, I'm going to do a movie, and I'll tell you how I want it to look. Because we had done all these stylized movies, Reds and Dick Tracy and things. I said, ugly. Now, I knew that would interest him very much, and whereas it's anything but ugly, it does look accidental. It causes people to say, well, it's a little rough looking, you know, which is exactly what we wanted to do, to make it look as if it were ad hoc, unplanned, documentary. A lot of steady cam, a lot of unexpected movement.
him. Boy, that George Hamilton show can move.
You know, I have the feeling that you don't know if you've really worked hard on a movie. You've had some sort of a nervous breakdown to make it. If you've produced it and directed and acted in it and written it and all this nonsense, and then you've gone out and you've tried to promote it in some way, which is the ugliest part of it all. And so, by the time you've finished that, you really have no idea what you've done. You know what your party line is. You know what you're trying to say you've done, or you try to whip some sentences together, which are mainly mush. But then I don't think you're able to see a movie for a number of years. And then when you look at it, you know, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, no matter how highly praised it is, you get the news from yourself of what you actually did, whether it's really a good movie or whether it was overpraised or it just happened to be current. It was fashionable, it was this or it was that. You can look back on these old mistakes and you say, come on, look at that. That's glaring and nobody busted me on it. And then there are other things you can do that were absolutely terrific and nobody gave you the credit for doing them. So I don't believe you don't know about it until it's in the library, not when you're running out there trying to make people think it's good or whatever.
Having made Bulworth, are you more pleased you're the guy who made Bulworth than the guy who was Bulworth?
The guy who was Bulworth?
Well, a senator. Are you more pleased to be making films about politicians than to be a politician?
Ah, you mean would I?
Yeah.
I would be just terrible running for public office now. I mean, when I say terrible, I'd be very unhappy. I'd probably do it pretty well. I take that back. I don't think I would do it very well. I think I would have a very good time if I were concerned about telling the truth and rather than winning. And I don't know if that's fair to do to your supporters. There are a lot of people, you know, who work very hard for you when you run for office, and they don't want a quixotic experience. They want you to win.
He wants to crash and burn his entire fucking career? Fine. Fuck him. But I'll be goddamned if that asshole's gonna take us down with him, am I right? I mean, it's not like I've not been completely loyal to that pig fucker. I've had other offers, you know, plenty. I beat him up with a stick. Didn't he have it all, though, Bill? Didn't he have it all? Looks. Brains more or less enough. Classy wife. But Jesus Christ, Bill, for God's sake, he had us. The motherfucker had us. If he had just listened to me on welfare reform in '88. If he just chased not quite so much pussy. Could have gone all the way. I behaved, but still might. 2000's wide fucking open, but now? With this shit? We are fucked in the ass, man. Fucked in the ass with our pants on. Cocksucker.
What you have to do now to win, I would not enjoy doing. I would enjoy very much going out and just telling the truth, but I don't think I would enjoy that as much as what I actually do for a living, which is to act and to write movies and direct them. And
was there ever a time when it was really on the cards in the past 20 or 30 years where you just might have had...
There was a time when people came to me after the Watergate debacle, and I had been very active in politics, and they came to me, pollsters came to me with some numbers that said, well, okay, look, you can be the governor of California, and I really wasn't very, I was appalled at that point, and at the thought of what my life would have to become if I actually went into politics. And
what sort of things appalled you?
Money, raising money and trimming your sails and being led by polls, which were prevalent even well, after Watergate. It's just become more so now, but more instantaneous now, that a person who runs for public office is a follower, not a leader. The leadership now is much more likely to come out of something that you're doing or that I'm doing. And it may be sometimes a politician really gets to take a minority opinion that he believes is right and turn it into a majority opinion and bring some change to fruition. Pretty rare.
Do you think, and you're somebody who wants to influence people, it seems to me, do you sometimes think I could have done more as a politician for the ideals I have about this country, for the ideas I have about this country's future, than I can do as a man who makes films?
No, I don't think that that given the compromises and the various inhibitions that I have normally and the kind of caution that I'm capable of, I don't think I ever would have done anything very valuable in politics had I gone into elective politics. You misstated one thing. You've said I've made an awful lot of movies. The fact is I have not made an awful lot of movies. I've made fewer movies than I think anyone who's managed to keep his head above the water for that length of time. Let's face it, it's 38 years. I've made, I can't even tell you how many movies, but it's fewer than anyone ever did who stayed alive for that period of time. I was lucky enough to make the movies that I wanted to make, and in a sense, my life in politics it's taken a lot of so much time away from the movies that I turned down, might have made, whatever. But they have fueled the movies. They fueled my life. And that's the way I've lived my life. And also not to be dismissed is that I don't think I've lived hypocritically. I think I've had a very good time up to this point, and I think I did show some extremely good judgment when I met Annette Bening, and then I have these 3 children, and so the people that I'm interested in influencing are those 3, Ben and Kathleen and Isabel. I hope Annette to some extent, but if I have some influence in the public consciousness, hey, more people will see me chatting with you on a television show than will see a movie. It's there for them. We're dealing in a different era. Movies are a form that we are just to make a movie is like going to a great restaurant now. You know, you can't do it every night, but it's really wonderful to be able to make a movie and have all those little moments strung together and go nuts making it, and then you have that, and then that goes into the library, and you know, years from now, if it's any good, people will look at that and say, isn't that nice? Probably more likely than that they would go into the library and watch us converse with one another. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think we'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Good.
The South Bank Show.